Nostalgia. Noun. A sentimental affection for, or wistful longing to return to a former time or place in one's life. Nostalgia can be an extremely powerful thing. As we all get older, we have fond memories of days gone by, of simpler times, or poignant moments in our lives, even sad ones. It's often a positive emotion that allows us to access important images from our past, things that form part of our identity, that are unquestionably you, and allows us to position that same past us in relation to our current selves and the future in a favourable way as we level up through our lives. But nostalgia can also be a bittersweet feeling. While the memories and emotions it recalls tend to be fond and happy ones, they are also tinged with the sadness that we might never be able to experience those things again, which is why psychologists call this a complex emotion, because it encompasses both these positive and negative emotions. In fact, due to the generally warm, pleasant feelings nostalgia tends to leave us with, it can improve your mood and self-esteem, and help us feel closer to the people around us, as it reminds us of what's really important and good in life, and makes negative things seem like less of a concern. When we're feeling lonely or sad, we're more prone to nostalgia, and being able to indulge in things that remind us of happier, more connected times in our youth is a good way to decrease these feelings of loneliness and stress. The memories nostalgia harkens back to are typically those we forged while surrounded by our loved ones, like being bundled all together on a sofa playing your favourite old video game. And so, nostalgia is often what leads to us feeling homesick when we're separated from these people and in an unfamiliar environment. It's just like starting a new Final Fantasy for the first time. We want the familiar, to return to a world we know like the back of our hands, to be surrounded by dear friends. But it's not quite like that. After battling with your friends to save the world from being obliterated by meteor, you load up this new game and have to start a new school and make totally new friends. With social bonds and connections at the heart of our nostalgic feelings, it's no surprise that iconic pieces of pop culture, known and loved by millions, like Final Fantasy VII, which was so many people's first Final Fantasy, have the power to connect and unite us years later with a mere glimpse of something we all recognise. It even has the power to bring grown men to tears. It's no secret that companies capitalise on this. You just have to look at the success of Pokemon Go last year, or Sonic Mania, or Crash Bandicoot, to fully appreciate what nostalgia can do. Hell, Nintendo and Disney's core business strategies are based on nostalgia. Why do you think Disney keeps making live-action reboots of their old films and re-releasing old classics as special editions every year? In fact, feeling nostalgia has been proven to make us not only more willing to part with our money, but to also weaken our desire for money. Perhaps in part because nostalgia makes us feel more bonded and connected to the people around us, which might then make money seem less important to us. This explains, at least in part, the increased use of nostalgia as a marketing strategy. We buy hugely overpriced popcorn at the movies, not because it's amazing, but because it's a tradition fueled by nostalgia. Companies use this nostalgia to make us feel connected to a larger, collective history that includes thousands, maybe even millions of people around the world, making us part of something much larger and discouraging us from connecting with our personal, individual histories, those that are part of our identities, while they distort our cheerful, warm memories to flog us tickets to their next reboot. Square Enix is no different. They've always harkened back to characters, themes, and elements from previous entries to sell us something new, but they've never done it quite to the scale of the Final Fantasy VII Remake. There is a certain amount of inevitability surrounding the remaking and remastering of popular games. As technologies improve and advance, companies can not only update an older product that's starting to look aged, but also resell it, often to their original consumers, plus a new audience. However, these technological improvements include another inevitability, that of changing, at the very least, the game mechanics of older products to fit with newer tastes, and simply because these advances in science and technology mean our modern consoles are capable of so much more than the clunky devices of our youth. This means that the Final Fantasy VII Remake will never look quite like the Final Fantasy VII of our pasts and memories. So what happens if we all return to Midgar only to find that it's not quite as we remembered? Or more importantly, what if the Midgar we remember has been altered in our own minds by the warm Mako glow of nostalgia? That rose-tinted glow can make a lot of things from our past seem better than they may have in actuality been. Nostalgia has a bad habit of distorting our memories because of something called fading effect bias, where our positive memories fade more slowly than the negative ones, which is why people consistently rate old TV shows more highly than current ones in studies, no matter the age of the people being tested. We all know that even when you're enjoying something, there tends to be at least some niggling annoyance or frustration with it. But in time, the memory of these small negative points fades away, leaving only the positives. Could it be that we're actually remembering Final Fantasy VII better than it really was, having glossed over its issues? This is a common downfall found by people looking to relive their happy nostalgic memories. Abraham Lincoln himself once wrote of the sadness he felt upon returning to his old home. "My childhood home I see again, and sadden with the view, and still as memory crowds my brain, there's pleasure in it too. Near 20 years have passed away, since here I bid farewell, to woods and fields and scenes of play, and playmates loved so well. Where many were, and few remain, of old familiar things, but seeing them to mind again, the lost and absent things." We're all aware that Final Fantasy VII has some quirks, some peculiarities or oddities born most often out of problems in the localization of the game, and the majority of these have become synonymous with the character and charm of Final Fantasy VII, and iconic parts of the franchise in their own rights. However, it should come as no surprise that when Final Fantasy VII is remade, we should expect for it to be translated correctly, and for those old kinks to be ironed out. How will we feel when the characters we've all grown up with are localized more accurately to the characterizations in the original Japanese? Will existing fans accept this new version of the character, or will they claim that it's not the character that they knew for the last 20 years? Will we be able to accept that Aerith's name is Aerith rather than Eris, as we've called her for so long? Will we accept that this guy is sick? It should also be expected that there will inevitably be some changes to the story, be it additions made possible by technological advances, or extensions to patch holes in the plot, or clear up areas of ambiguity. Do we want everything explained? Some things that we see as plot holes may have been left ambiguous on purpose. What if the connection we feel to the story is, in part, affected by our own headcanons? Those neural jumps and connections we make in our own minds. So how will it feel returning to a story that should feel completely, comfortably familiar, but is instead jarringly different? What if the characters we've come to know so well are portrayed differently in the remake? If they're made to fit in with more politically correct current standards, or if dialogue we know like the back of our hands is rewritten and updated? It seems quite likely that now, with the ability to have a fully voiced game, there will, at the very least, be additions to the original dialogue to flesh out the characters and the world, and add more life to both. 20 years ago, when Final Fantasy VII first came out, games were more about the joy of playing, which is partly shown in the visual style chosen for Final Fantasy VII. But a game being made today would never get away with something like that, with our current passion to strive for more and more realism and closeness to life in games. The many parts of the compilation of Final Fantasy VII have already provided us with somewhat of a precedent for this. By attempting to add to the original, building on present but less explored plotlines, and squeezing new storylines into an old timeline, parts of Final Fantasy VII that we all knew and loved so well were changed and in places retconned, undoing many original ideas and headcanons. However, even in doing this, they brought Final Fantasy VII's much-loved world to a new generation of people, and by making these games accessible to more people and across newer platforms, growing the community of fans and providing us with more friends to discuss new theories and headcanons with. There's no denying how large the fanbase for Final Fantasy VII is, or how many of us have vibrant, nostalgic memories connecting us with the original game and to each other. This has been shown by the sheer number of reaction videos that were produced immediately following the initial announcement of the Final Fantasy VII Remake, and the popularity of these videos. Final Fantasy VII is so iconic and famous, even among people who've never played it, that it's become part of our collective consciousness. Along with the massive visual upgrade to the game, will come an inevitable upgrade to the musical fidelity of the soundtrack. We'll no longer have MIDI that not quite emulates real-world instrumentation, but potentially tracks featuring full orchestration, much like those in Final Fantasy XV. This can be a double-edged sword, as we've seen with the remastered soundtrack for Final Fantasy X. Many players were unhappy with the new arrangements of tunes they were deeply familiar with, choosing to stick with the original, even though the new soundtrack was arguably of higher quality. Our hearing, along with our sense of smell, is inextricably linked to nostalgia via a deep neural connection linked with our memories. Just a few notes of a song can instantly trigger a memory, which can be disorienting if those notes are then followed by something wholly unfamiliar or even unrecognizable. YouTuber Happy Console Gamer speaks of how, even now, 20 years later, the music from Final Fantasy VII takes him back to when his father had just died. All this time later, the music still haunts him. His memories and emotions around Final Fantasy VII are mixed, and the game has a slightly ominous tone to it in his mind, because of the terrible things that were happening in his own personal life back then, which has always stopped him from returning to the game. Every one of us has our own experiences and memories of the game, and the instantly recognizable soundtrack elicits nostalgia and emotions from each of us in different ways. With all of this in mind, how will we feel returning to a world so dearly beloved, and reuniting with those who inhabit it, who we got to know intimately and moseyed with, only to find them to be not as we remembered? Without the Mako glow of nostalgia distorting our memories of the game, will it even be as good as we thought it was? Will it stay where it belongs, in our memories? And will it have the same meteoric impact as it did before? The reunion at hand may bring joy. It may bring fear. But let us embrace whatever it brings. For those who love this world and new friendly company therein, like, comment, and subscribe for more. And hit that bell button for notifications. We need more cowbell.